People we don't normally mix. On Memorial Day in 2006, I was the CBS News correspondent in Baghdad, and it was 4 months to the day after Bob Woodruff, colleague at ABC News, had been hit. Everyone with a star on their shoulder had to sign off on the CBS News embed that day. I had a small team of people, Paul Douglas and James Brolin. We met the night before, we talked about it. I wanted to make sure that their spidey senses weren't going off, and they said, no, you know, we're going to make air, it's Memorial Day. And you know they're not going to let us go far because we got to be back by noon. And hey, where can they take us? When we got to the green zone from our base in the red zone, they told us they were taking us to the Karada. And my heart sank, because I was like, great, Karada, that's not dangerous at all. How are we going to get that on the air? And then they introduced us to Captain James Alex Funkhauser of the 4th Infantry Division. Now, my first impression was, rose-colored glasses alert. He thinks everything is going great. And then Captain Funkhauser started to talk about his mission. They were going to take us to where Iraqis were beginning to take over checkpoints. They were taking over the Karada district, the first part of Baghdad, to be handed over to Iraqi control. But he didn't want to take us to the good news story first. He said, look, roadside bomb went off the day, yesterday, hit one of their patrols, and we have to teach them to show presence. We got to go back there because they're not willing to. And this was way before we in the media made counterinsurgency but such a big story. He said, look, those people on that street, they know which insurgent cell moved in, they know who planted that bomb, and I need to look at them eyeball to eyeball. They won't be able to lie face to face. That's how we ended up, about half an hour later, through choked Baghdad traffic, parked along a wide residential avenue next to some bombed out villas and an apartment block. And we got out of our Humvees, and Paul and James were looking at me going, okay, what are we filming here? And of course, Captain Funkhauser had taken the first Humvee, which always was the one that would get hit. And I'm like, great, I'm the captain, good choice. But we made it to that first stop. We were outside walking around, and I said, hey, we're looking for Iraqis to talk to. So the captain and I walked up and down the street while those guys did their security checks in wider and wider circles. And Paul and James filmed them. And the captain said, see those bombed out villas next to us? We think the insurgents are in there. They could be watching us right now. They were, but from an OP, an observation post in the apartment building. With that, the captain saw that his translator had engaged with some Iraqis, was talking to them. And he didn't care that some big network news correspondent was writing down his every word. He saw his mission ahead, jackrabbited down the street, ahead of me, and I know that saved my life. I saw him do it, I thought about catching up, and then I saw Paul and James were ahead of us filming this way, and I thought, they're going to get that shot. I could see that the Iraqis are staring towards the captain and giving him the evil eye. He's going to reach out his hand, say salamu alaikum, and those grimaces are going to dissolve into the beginnings of smiles involuntarily. I'm going to hang back. About the instant that the captain reached out his arm, the insurgents' command detonated an approximately 500-pound car bomb through us, sending a wall of shrapnel through the whole patrol. I was thrown to the ground, smelled something like 1,000 matches going off, and tried to figure out where I was, what had happened, and where my team was. I could hear screaming, couldn't tell who it was. I was able to lift my head, eventually, and saw some burning cars. In the meantime, I was going through this debate. Okay, I'm in pain. Don't know where my team is. Don't know what happened. But if I call for help, airway, breathing, circulation, they'll go to the quiet patient first. Clear their airway, restart their heart. They won't come to me. But then I saw those burning cars. I could feel burning in my legs. And I thought, well, okay, that means those cars are burning me, I'm in immediate danger. I can remember another drill we did in the combat medical course. I can call for help to be removed from immediate danger. At that moment, I started calling for help. Medic Izzy Flores was dealing with his first multiple combat casualty scene. He got to Captain Funkhauser and saw he had been instantly killed, couldn't be helped. Sam, his translator, couldn't be helped. Paul and James. James had been hit in the head, also killed instantly. Paul had a traumatic amputation of one of his legs. He got a tourniquet on him. He got to me. Just about the moment I started yelling, "Help, help, move me away from that burning car." And he said, "Ah, you're good," and he went to someone else. My big mouth. But I will always thank Izzy, because I never have to wonder. I later talked to the Iowa National Guardsman who ran into the scene, tied the tourniquets on me that saved my life. I was the last person to get medical aid. And when I woke up in Bethesda Naval Hospital every morning for about 3.5 months, realizing where I was, not knowing if I'd walk again, and remembering what had happened, and the Paul and James families, and at that point Captain Funkhauser's family as well, all hated me for surviving. That was one of the things I clung to. At least they all got help. At least the rest of the team, at least Paul got help before me. My toughest battle, it turned out, in the hospital was the loved ones who were so crucial in the beginning, towards the end, wanted to wrap me in cotton wool. Healing is pain. Learning to walk again, learning to run, all of those things you go through. Eventually your loved ones, they're tired of seeing you in pain and they want it to stop. And my mom used to try to block the physiotherapist from coming into the room. And when the doctors said they wanted me to take antidepressants and stop talking about Iraq, stop talking about the bombing, and deal with the post-traumatic stress later, and I said no, that was another fight. Eventually, I'm a woman in her 40s from the Oprah generation, like I'm not taking drugs, I'm going to talk. And it was a Navy psychotherapist who normally debriefed special operations teams who came in and said, "I hear you're the one that they can't shut up. I'll work with you." And within 3 weeks, the nightmares, the hypervigilance, and the flashbacks, it all stopped. My next battle was when I got back to work. One of the ways that I came to know Jay and Erica, I couldn't get my company, the people I worked with, my other family, to recognize that I wasn't still broken, that I had new things to give. Most people who go through trauma, post-traumatic stress, even PTSD, you end up with what's called post-traumatic growth, the wisdom, experience, and resilience of what you've gone through. Instead, I found my loved ones, my family of CBS News, couldn't stand seeing me back in the fight. It was Admiral Mike Mullen who smoked them out when he invited me on his USO tour. And my bosses, who'd seen me in launch duel, bloody head to toe, they finally admitted they couldn't stand being the ones who put me back in harm's way. And I said, okay. And that's how I ended up at the Associated Press, now covering a lot of what you all do. And I am back in the fight. One of the things that happened in this process is I wrote a book describing all of these different battles, and tried to describe both the anger and what eventually becomes, hopefully, the grace of teaching this lesson to people, that people who've come back from the war zone, we might be beaten up, some of us might be physically injured, but we have a lot to give. Actually, a lot of us have more to give than when we went through this experience, than from before we went through this experience. So there I was giving a speech at Admiral Mullen's request to a bunch of baby one-stars, and there's this guy in the back of the room who wouldn't stop asking obnoxious questions. And he had this symbol I didn't recognize overseas. I'd been overseas for a decade. I'd never met a SEAL. I didn't know what a trident was. And so he asked these obnoxious questions like, when journalists break rules, like, don't you all have rules? Shouldn't you sort of have a journalist jail? I'm looking at her, who are you? He waits to the end of the book signing line, opens my book to Jay's sign on the door. I'd never met Jay, I didn't know his name. That sign had gone viral in the wounded warrior community. Someone had sent it to me, so I stole it, like any journalist would, put it in my book. So this guy opens it up and says, "Do you know this guy?" And I said, "No, no." He This Navy SEAL. They don't talk to the media. And he said, I'm Ed Winters, I'm head of Navy SEALs. I'll introduce you. So that's how I ended up meeting Jay and Erica and meeting other people who are involved in this fight, the next battle, teaching the folks who've stayed back home what all the folks who've gone overseas have to offer. When my dad came back from World War II, everyone wanted to hire him. Everyone wanted him part of their community. So the next step is to teach America, this new generation, welcome home. Here's a job, and we want to hear what you've been through. So with that, it's an honor to be here, and I want to bring up one of the people who, as I said, I'm honored to call a friend, and who has welcomed me in an honorary sense into your community. Thank you very much, Jay Redmond.